Welcome to another episode of No Script, No Problem on Believe, the #1 podcast network for professionals. Do you believe? I'm your host, Steve Berkowitz. If you enjoy No Script, No Problem, please subscribe and rate the show with 5 stars. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, and TuneIn. You can also find it on Believe.com and at Believe Podcast. Follow me on social media. You can get me on Threads or Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Mastodon, even Facebook. If you're interested in advertising on the show, please contact Believe at Believe.com. All right, let's get started. Coming up on the show, I'll be chatting with sports journalist Emily Bicks of Heavy Sports. We're going to talk about the NFL Draft. But before we get to that, it's time for your reality check. Last week, we talked about the ongoing battle for NBA broadcast rights. Well, according to Bloomberg, the NBA is close to signing new long-term broadcast agreements that would pay the league, get this, about $76 billion over 11 years. That is 3 times its current deal. Considering that their ratings compared to, like, say, the NFL, it really is mind-boggling that they're tripling what they're already making on TV rights. Anyway, the league has agreed to the general framework of deals with Disney, meaning ESPN and ABC, and then Amazon for Amazon Prime Video, that are worth $2.6 billion and $1.8 billion a year, respectively. That's according to people familiar with the terms. Again, that's from Bloomberg. As for that coveted third spot, which currently belongs to Warner Brothers Discovery, looks like there's somebody who's going after that spot. NBC is planning to bid $2.5 billion a year for rights to the games. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. If the offer is successful, the company would supplant WBD, and as we all know, everybody loves TNT, but they would go away if NBC can knock them out. And as of right now, TNT, their offer is about half of what NBC is offering. WBD, their offer is $1.2 billion, according to the Journal. This is going to put David Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, in a very precarious situation. Back in 2022, he famously said that they did not need the NBA. And investors have not reacted well to the prospect of the Disco Bros missing out on the NBA. Their stock fell 10% after the news broke on Tuesday that NBC had the leg up. The stock was at its lowest price ever, $7.62. Current rights deals expire after the 2024-25 season. Amazon's Prime Video, their streaming deal is supposed to be similar to what they have with the NFL in terms of Thursday night football. It gives Amazon another foot into live sports, which is what all the streamers are looking to do. As for the Inside the NBA crew, Charles Barkley signed a new 10-year deal extension with TNT in 2022, and Shaquille O'Neal, Ernie Johnson, and Kenny Smith were also extended for unspecified terms. So the question would be, would NBC, if they get the deal, would they buy out the contracts? Would the guys go to Amazon? Nobody wants to not see that gang cover the NBA. I mean, it wouldn't be the same without them. So that's definitely a big question mark. There was an article about Barkley saying that his deal is structured so that if basketball goes away from TNT, he can go elsewhere. I think for sure we'll see Charles and the gang covering the NBA in some capacity. Meanwhile, the Paramount Global soap opera continues. Sony Pictures Entertainment and Apollo Global Management have formally reached out to Paramount Global's special board committee asking to discuss a potential $26 billion cash offer. That's according to Deadline. It comes as Paramount's exclusive negotiating window with David Ellison's Skydance Media is set to expire. Paramount shares are up more than 13% on the news. Investors would very much prefer a Sony Apollo acquisition to a Skydance deal as it currently is configured, even after Skydance sweetened the deal over the weekend. The partners would buy out the entire company. This is Sony and Apollo. They would buy out the whole company and take it private, whereas Skydance is contemplating paying Sherry Redstone directly for her controlling stake in Paramount through a special class of voting shares and a capital infusion and an all-stock merger with Skydance. So that would be much better for Sherry, whereas the Apollo and Sony deal, much better for the shareholders. Sony would need to sell the broadcast assets, splitting up the company. Regulators would need to approve a merger of the two remaining Hollywood studios. In a very dramatic turn of events, on Monday, Paramount CEO Bob Bakish exited the company. So he is gone. And three top executives, Brian Robbins, George Cheeks, and Chris McCarthy, have been elevated to what is being called the office of the CEO. And a earnings call was about 15 minutes and no one answered any questions. Who knows what will happen here, but I think one thing is for certain, and that is the cable assets are going to go bye-bye at some point in the near future. All right, let's move on to the interview. I'm really excited for you guys to hear my conversation with Emily Bicks. She is a sports journalist who has covered the NFL since 2019 for Heavy Sports. She currently covers the Buffalo Bills, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Emily has interviewed some of the biggest stars in sports, including Shaquille O'Neal, who we just talked about, Jerry Rice, and Stephon Diggs. Biggs has over a decade of experience as a journalist with bylines in publications such as the New York Observer, Refinery 29, and Variety. We chatted about the first round of the NFL draft, which took place last week in Detroit. If you don't know, I started out my career in sports, so this was, as you would expect, a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoy it. Sports reporter for Heavy Sports, covering the Kansas City Chiefs, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Buffalo Bills, Emily Bicks. Welcome to No Script, No Problem.
Thank you.
You got the NFL draft, and no surprise at number one, Caleb Williams going to Chicago Bears, but we had a couple of surprises in the first round. Lots of quarterbacks going, 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. But before we get to the Chiefs, before we get to the Bills, let's talk a little bit about the big surprise here. Michael Penix Jr. Going 8th to the Falcons. They already got Kirk Cousins. Talk to me a little bit about what were you thinking when you see Michael Penix Jr. going 8th to the Falcons?
My jaw dropped. I could not believe it. Because my jaw dropped once they signed Kirk Cousins to a $180 million deal with $100 million guaranteed. Like, that's franchise money. That's like, you're our guy. So I understand that if you love a quarterback, you got to go get him. But this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know when they're planning to start Penix. It was like the most shocking. Everyone was very surprised by it because you select, if you're looking for insurance, you're not finding that in the first round. You're not finding that with the number 8 overall pick. There are other holes to fill. Making matters worse is that they didn't tell Kirk. They called him while they were about to make the pick, which creates a completely awkward situation. You want a good, happy quarterback's room. So if you're going to make a move like that, you always let the main guy know. Like when the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, they told Alex Smith. And so he knew the situation. Awkward. I did see Kirk Cousins talked about it today. He's like, I gave Penix a call. It's all good. I mean, Kirk Cousins has to be the nicest guy in the NFL, right? I would make him Mr. Congeniality. We all saw him on quarterback. He's just a goofball, sweetheart. But yikes. I don't know what they're doing. If they do move on from Kirk Cousins, I saw a lot of fans being like, no, it's perfect insurance. It's like, well, Penix has had 4 season-ending injuries, 4 separate ones throughout his career. So he already has a lot of wear and tear on his body. Amazing arm. I can totally see why people are excited about him. I didn't think he would go at number 8, but I don't know how he's going to be used in Atlanta or when he's going to play. Or freak accident, Cousins gets injured and Penix goes in earlier, then maybe everyone's be like, see? But I don't know. For Falcons fans, I'm just kind of I don't know. I heard the Braves are going to be good this year. It's just rough.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you in terms of like, look, I think this past season has proven that you need more than just an adequate backup in the NFL. You have to have a solid, if not really good backup in the NFL because the starters are getting hurt so much more often than they used to. So, okay, that's good. Get a good backup. But to your point, Michael Penix Jr. is 24, multiple season ending injuries. And now you got Cousins coming off an Achilles injury. So you're not getting this healthy young guy who's got a huge ceiling. This is a guy, Penix Jr., great season, great left arm, powerful arm. Sure, great. But health is not on the bright side for this guy. So I'm as puzzled as anybody. I'm sitting there thinking, 8th pick, where's your big wide receiver so that Cousins with his big arm that you gave, like you said, huge contract, give him a wide receiver who can run and he can throw it to.
Everyone knew Penix was going to be entering the draft. He wasn't a surprise late decision, I think I'll enter this year. So if the Falcons had their eye on him, why give Cousins that contract? Why? $100 million guaranteed. And that's going to affect them for years because it's $90 million in the first two and then another 10 guaranteed in the third year. So it's going to affect their free agency and how they can draft for the next 3 years if they are planning to move on from Cousins anytime soon.
All right. So moving on, we're going to stick with quarterbacks or a quarterback theme here, which was big in the first round. A lot of people expected the Giants to take a quarterback. All right. Daniel Jones has not lived up to their expectations, but with that number 6 pick, they instead went with LSU wide receiver Malik Nabers. Talk to me a little bit about how you feel about Nabers. Great career at LSU, high profile wide receiver for the Tigers. Probably going to walk right in and get a starting spot right there. So talk to me a little bit about how you feel about Nabers.
I think Nabers is a star. I think he's the type of guy that can go onto a team and be their number 1 wide receiver. The problem in New York is that he's got to catch the ball. He can't throw it and catch it. And like Daniel Jones doesn't look like the answer. And I don't even know if the Giants are that committed to Daniel Jones right now. Because when they signed Drew Lock from the Seahawks in the offseason, Seahawks general manager John Schneider, he was like, we wanted to keep Drew, but we didn't because they teased him. They were like, you could become a starter here. And everyone was like, oh, wow, because the Giants GM and head coach said, Jones is our guy. Like, we're not veering off of that. And then Schneider makes this comment. And then Drew Lock says during his press conference, no, I know my role. I'm a backup. But then the details of his contract came out and he has all these incentives to make even more money based off of playing time, which is a huge draw. And you don't put that in a contract if you don't expect them to get some playing time. So I don't know. It's hard to get excited. I mean, Nabers is a very exciting player. It's just hard to get excited about him being in New York, to see him thriving. And I feel for him in that way where it's like, oh man, yeah, it's going to be tough. I don't know what that'll do for his rookie season, how that'll play out. But at the same time, what if the Giants looked at, because I don't think all the quarterbacks that went in the first round are actually first round graded quarterbacks. I think it was a year where there were a lot of teams needed quarterbacks. So I'll give the Giants the benefit of saying they looked at what was available and they were like, that's not worth trading up for. That's not worth our first round pick, and just thinking long term for the future. And maybe they'll find their franchise quarterback next year. And so maybe it's a long game, right? I think it's tough because Brian Dable's job might be on the line here. If this does, I like how another season of a disappointment might be really tough, but that's the whole thing with the draft too. We haven't seen them play in the NFL. Everything's just a guess and conjecture right now. So anyone who's telling you this is definitely going to happen, that person's going to change the franchise and that one's going to be a star, it's like, ugh.
That's right. That's right. We don't know who the Ryan Leaf.
Nobody knows.
We don't know who the Ryan Leaf of this bunch will be, or the Jamarcus Russell. All right, let's talk about two of the teams that you cover very, very closely. We're talking about the Chiefs and the Bills, which very conveniently for you, actually, there was a trade involving Chiefs and the Bills. Talk to me a little bit about this. Bills kind of surprisingly, decide to trade to the 28th pick with the Chiefs, and it ends up for Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of Texas. What's going on here? I mean, the last thing you would think is that the Bills would want to allow the Chiefs to move up to get someone. And, why would they ever want Patrick Mahomes to get another weapon? Xavier Worthy, 4'2", 140. I mean, this is a fast guy. What's going on here for the Bills? What's happening?
I will admit, like, my first reaction was, what the hell? Like, I couldn't, what's happening? It was also, it's a long night. You're waiting for finally, it's pick number 28. And it's like, okay, we need a wide receiver because you just traded Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. You don't have a number one wide receiver. And this year's talent in the draft class was so deep. So I was over there like cheering that they would trade up. I didn't think that they would trade down, and especially with the Chiefs. So for Bills Mafia, this is very emotional. This is not great. The fan backlash was intense, and analysts too that cover the team were just like, what? Why? At the same time, Bills general manager Brandon Beane was speaking to reporters, and not in the same words, was basically like, I didn't have a first round grade for Xavier Worthy or anyone else left on the board. So why not trade back and possibly still get the players I can get in the second round while stockpiling some picks? So it's hard to say how this is going to pan out. I think it's a scary position for Beane because you have just put the fastest wide receiver as a weapon for Mahomes. And if they come to Highmark Stadium and they score a bunch of touchdowns, I mean, it's going to be devastating. It's going to be awful. If Worthy turns out to be this one-trick pony, he's got speed and he is not a reliable receiver, then Beane is going to get the last laugh here. So right now, it's hard to say how it's going to work out, especially that the Bills traded back again. So they ended up having no picks in the first round. So what are they going to do next? They could make a trade to get an experienced wide receiver. There's rumors going around that they could make a trade for T. Higgins. They could maybe get Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. I don't know about that because they don't have the money. So, like, it's a great idea, but it would take, I don't know actually how that would turn out. But at the same time, I didn't expect the Bills to eat over $31 million of dead money to get rid of Diggs. So if there's a wide receiver out there, a veteran one, proven talent in the NFL, which none of these draft picks have, obviously, maybe he's cooking something up back there that we just don't know about.
Yeah, I'm baffled. I'm not. Yeah, I'm totally baffled. Tell me a little bit about what the Chiefs get with Xavier Worthy.
They desperately needed a wide receiver. Last year during the regular season, they led the league in drops. And they still won the Super Bowl. I mean, it's a testament to Mahomes. The guy is just like a freak of nature. So they signed Hollywood Brown in the offseason, which is great. It's a 1-year prove-it deal. So that's win-win. Their number one wide receiver, Rashee Rice, is in trouble right now, and he's expected to get suspended for at least several games following the car accident that he had and then left the scene of the crime. So it's not a great situation there. So I think the fit with the Chiefs is great. I think with any other team, I don't think the Bills wanted Worthy. I don't think it made a good fit there. But with the Mahomes, it could be, oh, wow, the speediest guy with the best quarterback in the entire league. How can this not work out? But at the same time, if you look at the Chiefs' history with receivers, it's not great. I mean, other than Rice, right? The Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman, they haven't been batting 1,000 with their wide receiver picks. So the thing is even if it doesn't work out, Mahomes will probably still figure out a way to win. I don't know. But and they're going for the Super Bowl three-peat, right? So their defense is still stacked, right? They retained Chris Jones. They retained Drew Tranquill. They have a stacked defense still, which is funny that even in the draft, every team is trying to beat the Chiefs, right? And they're all picking offensive players, not beefing up their defense to shut down Mahomes and his receivers.
You and I were texting during the draft, And I mean, you had that, the crowd in Detroit was just insane. It was like it looked like a rock concert. You had Eminem coming out and introducing Commissioner
Insane.
Goodell. It really felt like, a concert. Talk to me a little bit about, drafts. You didn't used to be. There was a time when it was just really boring and the commissioner would just bring out. Now it is a full on, epic show.
I think it's just such a dead part of the season, and everyone is just so hungry for NFL content that they have been able to turn it into this spectacular. And there are so many feel-good stories of, you're seeing these young men get their dreams are coming true, and their families are surrounded by them. And that's great. At the same time, it's a little you don't know if they're going to be good. No one actually knows, right, how they're going to translate in the NFL. So the whole thing is like this big show that I think I don't know, maybe for a lot of people, it's still a lot of tedious. However, if you're in Detroit and there's pop-ups, there's like, the parties all over town, why not get dressed up in your team's like jersey, because you have like another several months before you're throwing that thing on, and go have a party with all your friends. And all the players can bring their families. Like, they can only have so many friends and family in the area where they're getting drafted. Like, some players have said, I watched from home because I have 30 friends and family, and if I can't bring them all, I'm not going. So which is crazy, right? Like, I don't even think I have 30 friends. So like, so I think a lot of them are they went to Detroit too, to like support them. I think they could make it more exciting, but at the problem is that it just takes forever. Like, Chicago didn't need to take the entire time to take Caleb Williams. I'm like, what's going on? Did a team call you and say like, please milk this because we're working on a trade like 2, 3, 4, but then we had no trades. The first hour of the draft was not super exciting until we got the shocking pick of Penix Jr. at number 8. And then everyone had someone to talk about. So thank you, Atlanta, for that. It did wake everyone up. Until then, it was like what everyone expected, really. And they're also making a killing, right? The NFL, like, Caleb Williams has the fastest selling jersey. He sold more jerseys than Caitlin Clark did after the draft, which, I mean, she is a superstar, right? And it's like changing that entire league. And so that just like, they're selling stuff.
It's a great point. All right. This was awesome, Emily. Thank you so much. Before you go, tell everybody where they can read all your great stuff at Heavy Sports and how to follow you on social media.
All my articles are at Heavy Sports. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Miss Bicks on Instagram and Threads.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emily. All right. Now, before I go, I want to say congratulations to the writers of the MTV clip show Ridiculousness, which is really kind of one of the handful of shows that is still on the air on MTV. You can pretty much watch it 10 hours of the day. The writers who voted to organize under the Writers Guild West of America last year scored a contract that covers minimum compensation, residuals, benefits, AI regulations, and more. So good on them. It's about damn time. And finally, a couple recommendations for you. Make sure to check out the documentary Rather. It's about the legendary news broadcaster Dan Rather. Congratulations to producer Ethan Goldman. He's a friend of mine. He worked his ass off to get that thing made, along with a lot of other fine folks. Also, I really enjoyed Fallout on Amazon. I never played the video game, was totally unfamiliar with the IP, but you gotta love Walton Goggins. He really killed it, and it was really a fun, enjoyable watch. So definitely check that one out. Okay, that's going to do it for another episode of No Script, No Problem. For everybody listening, please remember to subscribe, download, and rate the show with 5 stars. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and TuneIn. You can also find it at Believe.com and at Believe Podcast. Follow me on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram, Facebook, Threads, pretty much everywhere. You can also email any questions you have to noscriptnoproblempodcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in advertising on the show, please contact Believe at Believe.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Steve Berkowitz for No Script, No Problem.